Yes. Nice work.
Let's go.
Keep your head down. Faster feet, control. Follow through with the lace.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We're unpacking a really fascinating coaching document today.
Yeah, the 18 Pillars of Elite Football Mastery.
Right, exactly. And I want to set the stage here for you because, usually when you and I are watching a highlight reel of a professional athlete,
It just looks so effortless.
completely,
Yeah.
we are presented with this illusion of utter simplicity. You see a striker blast a ball into the top corner of the net, and your brain, immediately categorizes it as just raw binary talent.
Right, you either have the physical gift to run incredibly fast and kick incredibly hard, or you just don't.
Exactly. The television broadcast makes it look so clean.
Well, it's heavily curated to look instinctual.
Yeah.
We, as spectators, we love to attribute that final visible action to a sort of physical lottery that a particular athlete just happened to win.
Yeah.
We see the goal, and we just ignore the decades of microscopic adaptations that made it possible.
But then you actually read the theoretical framework of what creates an elite player. I mean, the actual source material we're diving into today. And that simple highlight reel just immediately shatters into a million pieces.
It really does.
Because what this document lays out isn't just a list of soccer tips. It is a highly complex, multi-dimensional matrix of human performance. It treats the athlete not as a talented accident, but as an engineered system.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive.
Oh.
We are going to take these 18 distinct pillars and distill them into a cohesive blueprint of elite mastery.
Which is super exciting.
Because what this document proves, undeniably, is that true excellence, whether on a pitch, in a boardroom, or, an operating theater, it's about so much more than just the final execution. It's an intricate architectural build of physical, cognitive, and psychological layers.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because reading through this source material, I immediately noticed a distinct hierarchy. Before a player can outsmart anyone with brilliant tactics, they need a baseline delivery system. I started looking at this first bucket of traits as, the hardware of a computer or the chassis of a high-performance vehicle.
The foundational stuff.
Exactly. It's completely foundational, but also totally useless without the right programming driving it.
Right, and the source is entirely unsentimental about this physical baseline. It establishes the hardware requirement primarily through what it categorizes as prime physical condition. Pillar 13, specifically.
Yeah, Pillar 13.
But notice how it breaks that down. It doesn't just ask an athlete to be fit. It demands this overlapping combination of being strong, fast, agile, and possessing high stamina.
Which is an insane combination to maintain.
It is, and the reason for that specific combination is mechanical. You are basically building a biological machine that can execute explosive, fast-twitch movements, but sustain that explosive capability without a drop in output in the 90th minute.
In a grueling, oxygen-deprived state.
Exactly.
See, I always assumed baseline fitness was mostly just, having the lungs to run for 90 minutes.
Right, cardio.
Yeah, cardio. But the text ties that physical stamina directly to mechanical tools. The section on passing mastery, Pillars 1 and 2, absolutely terrified me when I really thought about the mechanics.
Oh, it's incredibly demanding.
It really is. It demands the player operate the ball effectively with both the right and the left foot for short, medium, and long distances. Think about the biomechanical symmetry required there.
It's wild.
I mean, most of us can barely navigate brushing our teeth with our non-dominant hand.
Yeah, true.
Yet this framework expects an athlete sprinting at 20 miles an hour to launch a perfectly weighted 40-yard diagonal pass with their weak foot, all while a defender is actively trying to tackle them.
What's fascinating here is how the text explicitly pairs that extreme physical agility with zero-tolerance accuracy.
Right, it's not just about power.
No, it's not simply about the power or the speed of that 40-yard pass. The framework emphasizes hitting teammates accurately, specifically to minimize errors.
Because even a slight mistake is costly.
Exactly. The document points out that a single millimeter of miscalculation gives the opponent an advantage. So the hardware isn't just about raw horsepower. It is about maintaining pinpoint, error-free precision under immense physical fatigue.
That zero-tolerance approach bleeds right into Pillar 12, too.
Yeah.
The individual skills it lists: dribbling, ball control, shooting, heading, tackling.
The ability to create solo chances.
Right. If the fitness and the passing are the networking cables of our hardware analogy, These solo skills are the standalone processing power. You're manipulating a physical object in three-dimensional space while under extreme duress.
But as with any machine, having the most powerful processor on the market is entirely irrelevant if the operating system is corrupted or lagging.
Oh, for sure.
You can have the ambidextrous passing and the 90-minute stamina, but if the brain cannot direct those tools efficiently, the hardware is wasted. This is where the framework forces us to shift from physical action to cognitive processing.
The software layer. This was the most revealing part of the document for me. Once you have that perfectly tuned physical engine, the cognitive load required to actually use it is staggering.
Oh, absolutely.
The text outlines this concept of football intelligence in Pillar 17. And it's not just about knowing the rules of the game, it defines it as understanding the rhythm of the game, recognizing match momentum, and my favorite part, finding empty space.
Finding empty space is a profoundly intellectual task.
Yeah.
It requires an athlete to constantly map out not where the ball currently is, but where the ball is going to be, and crucially, where the opponents are not. It is predictive modeling happening in real time.
It makes me think of a military radar system. You aren't just looking at the physical bodies in front of you. Your brain is constantly pinging the environment, mapping out the ghosts of where everyone will be 3 seconds from now.
That's a great analogy.
And that ties directly into Pillars 3 and 8, reading the opponent. It explicitly demands anticipating attacks, knowing exactly when to press, when to drop back, or when to jump a passing lane to intercept. You are actively scanning 21 other highly trained human beings for physical, technical, or positional flaws.
And let's examine how that scanning actually functions biologically.
Yeah.
You are processing the subtle hip rotation of the opposing striker, the fatigue level of the midfielder, the angle of the defender's shoulders.
There's so much data.
It is. The framework requires you to identify and exploit those microflaws instantly. Which brings us to the cognitive speed the text demands in Pillars 5 and 7. Fast decision-making and individual tactics.
Right.
The moment a player receives the ball, they must decide without conscious deliberation whether to pass, dribble, or shoot.
But wait, I really struggled with this next part. I get the fast decision-making, but there feels like a massive contradiction in the text.
Oh, how so?
Well, in one breath, the document demands absolute tactical discipline, which we'll get to. But in another, in Pillar 4, it explicitly calls for improvisation.
Right, it does say that.
It states that a player shouldn't get stuck on one pattern and must find creative solutions. How on earth do you maintain rigid tactical structure while simultaneously engaging in wild, spontaneous improvisation?
I mean, it looks like a paradox, but the document resolves it through context. It frames improvisation not as a constant state of chaos or showing off, but as a highly specific tool for what it calls difficult situations.
Okay, so it's essentially a break glass in case of emergency protocol.
Precisely. That predictive football intelligence we just discussed is exactly what allows a master player to recognize the exact fraction of a second when the rigid tactical pattern has failed.
Oh, I see.
If you run the pre-planned play and an unexpected defender suddenly blocks the passing lane, you don't just blindly execute a failed plan. The software recognizes the error, breaks the established rule, and improvises.
Wow.
But the true mastery, the terrifying cognitive demand here, is that this entire calculation, identifying the failure and executing the creative solution, has to happen in milliseconds.
The processing power required to make that pass dribble shoot calculation in the blink of an eye is just immense. Okay, so we have the hardware, the physical body, the stamina, the ambidextrous zero-tolerance skill.
Yep.
And we have the software, the radar system mapping empty space, the rapid-fire decision-making, the emergency improvisation. But a single genius computer sitting alone in a dark room doesn't accomplish much, you know.
Not at all.
A network of them, however, operating in perfect sync, is unstoppable. And that brings us to the third layer of this blueprint: team dynamics, strategy, and discipline, the network.
Because regardless of how high a player's individual diagnostic stats are, if they cannot interface flawlessly with the other 10 nodes on their network, the entire system collapses. Football is fundamentally a collaborative ecosystem.
And the text outlines exactly how this network is constructed. It starts with Pillar 6, understanding and executing the coach's strategy. It demands absolute tactical discipline for what the team needs, entirely superseding what the individual player might want to do. Then it layers on Pillar 14, active communication on the pitch. You have to constantly transmit data to the other nodes. And all of this culminates in a trait that sounds simple, but is incredibly complex in practice, which is Pillar 15, teamwork.
Yeah, the document explicitly calls for being unselfish and putting the team's interests above any personal glory.
Which is huge.
It is an excruciatingly difficult psychological pivot for elite talent. Think about the reality of a professional athlete. They have spent their entire lives being told they are prodigies, being celebrated for their individual brilliance.
Oh, absolutely.
To ask that person in the heat of the moment to suppress their ego and sacrifice their own highlight reel goal for a secondary assist, it requires a profound level of maturity. It goes completely against the instinct of a top performer.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. When the source talks about Pillar 16, total discipline, it obviously applies it to following the coach's instructions and showing up for daily training.
Sure.
But it goes out of its way to explicitly mention lifestyle. Lifestyle. It tells you that this elite performance network doesn't power down when you take off your cleats and leave the stadium.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that specific mention of lifestyle is the hidden variable behind everything we've discussed so far.
How so?
Well, what time you go to sleep on a Tuesday, what you eat for breakfast, how you manage your off-field stress, all of that dictates your neurological recovery.
Wow.
If your lifestyle is undisciplined, your cognitive processing speed drops by a fraction of a second on Sunday. Your spatial radar gets fuzzy. So when the document demands holistic discipline, unselfishness, and active communication, it is describing the invisible glue that turns 11 isolated, ego-driven individuals into a single, cohesive organism capable of executing a unified strategy.
A single, cohesive organism. That is a brilliant way to visualize it.
Yeah.
But here's the fatal flaw with organisms. They get stressed, they get attacked by viruses, they get pushed into fight or flight mode.
They certainly do.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most vital layer of our deep dive today. We've built the hardware, we've installed the software, we've networked the computers. Now we need the firewall.
The psychological armor.
Exactly. We need the armor required to prevent all of these other pillars from totally collapsing under pressure.
Because you have to step back and ask yourself a very practical question. What happens to that perfectly unselfish strategy and that flawless, millimeter-precise passing skill when the environment actively turns hostile?
Right.
What happens to the software when 80,000 opposing fans are screaming insults at you? The referee has just made a completely blind, unfair call that penalizes your team, and you are losing with 10 minutes left on the clock.
That is the ultimate stress test of the entire system. And the framework addresses this directly through Pillar 9, emotional control. It explicitly states a player must remain calm under provocation. They have to stay composed in heated situations or when facing unfavorable referee decisions. I'm going to pause on that for a second. Think about the physiological response of being wronged. A referee robs you of legitimate advantage. Your body immediately dumps adrenaline into your bloodstream. Your heart rate spikes.
Your peripheral vision literally narrows.
Yes. Yet this document demands that instead of losing your temper, you override your autonomic nervous system, compartmentalize the injustice, and keep playing.
It's asking for an almost stoic philosophy applied in real time under extreme physical duress, and it builds that philosophy right into pillars 10 and 11, mental toughness and pressure resistance.
Right.
The source insists that a player must feel confident before and during the match, showing absolutely zero fear toward more famous or physically stronger opponents, and crucially, they have to maintain absolute focus despite the immense crushing pressure from the crowd.
And if they manage to maintain that firewall, they reach the final trait. Pillar 18, high fighting spirit, a total refusal to give up until the final whistle blows, regardless of the score deficit. So what does this all mean? When we went through this psychological armor, this emotional firewall, how does it act as the ultimate differentiator between an athlete who is just physically gifted and a true master of the game?
What stands out to me is how remarkably pragmatic the source material is. By specifically highlighting the danger of provocation and unfavorable referee decisions, it is acknowledging a dark but fundamental truth about high performance.
Which is?
External forces will be unfair. The environment will be chaotic, biased, and unjust. Elite mastery, therefore, isn't about hoping for a fair game or ideal conditions.
It's about accepting it.
Yes, accepting the unfairness as a constant and rigidly controlling one's internal emotional response so that the physiological hardware and the cognitive software can continue to operate flawlessly. A true master doesn't let the referee's terrible call introduce a virus into their decision-making algorithm.
Wow.
They recognize the anger, they quarantine it, and they execute the next pass with the exact same millimeter precision.
They don't let the virus corrupt the system. That is such a powerful insight. And it perfectly sets up the grand conclusion of the source material. After mapping out all these complex layers, the text ends with a bolded, definitive statement.
It does.
It synthesizes everything we've just unpacked. It concludes that a truly great football player isn't just someone with a high level of individual skill. True greatness is the ultimate combination of football intelligence, tactical discipline, mental strength, teamwork, and split-second decision-making, all functioning simultaneously for the good of the team.
It is a remarkable synthesis of human capability. And as we wrap up, this raises an important question for you, the listener. Because while this document was written specifically for the football pitch, this checklist is, in reality, a masterclass for any high-pressure collaborative environment you might find yourself in.
Absolutely.
Think about your own career for a second. Think about a high-stakes corporate boardroom during a tense merger negotiation, or an emergency room in a hospital during a crisis, or even a complex creative project running right up against a tight deadline.
The stakes are different, but the mechanisms are the same.
Exactly. The need for baseline technical skill, the ability to process complex cognitive maps in a split second, the necessity of unselfish communication, and the absolute requirement for emotional control when things go completely unfairly wrong. Those are universal demands.
They really are. The arena might change, but the foundational matrix of human mastery stays exactly the same. So we just spent this time exploring the 18 pillars of elite football mastery. If you had to write the pillars for excellence in your own profession, or even in your own daily life, which of these traits would be your absolute number one?
That's a great question.
Would it be that split-second decision-making under fire? Would it be the emotional control to stay calm under unfair pressure? Or maybe the unselfish teamwork required to elevate the whole group?
There's no wrong answer, really.
Think about it. Because once you step back and look at the entire matrix, you realize the magic isn't in that simple 5-second highlight reel. The real magic is in the messy, incredibly complex, beautiful architecture underneath. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute ultimate blueprint for elite football mastery, as our source material lays out right from the jump, which means we're looking at exactly how to play high-quality football. So, whether you're a real student of the game, a diehard fan, or an aspiring athlete who wants to figure out the exact anatomy of a top-tier player, well, you're in exactly the right place. We are going to decode the exact traits that build a true champion. And you know, this brings us to the ultimate question, right? The one every single scout, coach, and fan is always asking. What actually separates your average player from an absolute legend of the pitch? Now, it's super easy to just wave our hands and say, oh, it's raw talent. But honestly, that's a massive oversimplification. Our source material really digs deep here, breaking down exactly 18 distinct, critical qualities that make up a complete elite football player. But hey, trying to juggle 18 different traits all at once is a lot to ask. So instead of just reading you a giant, disjointed list of those 18 qualities, we've organized this explainer to break the ultimate player down into 4 essential, really easy-to-digest pillars. We've got the technical and physical foundation, on-pitch intelligence, mental steel and discipline, and finally, synergy and teamwork. Let's jump straight into Section 1, the technical and physical foundation, also known as the visible skills. This is the tangible, super athletic side of the game. You know, the stuff that literally gets fans out of their seats every weekend. To even step onto the pitch at an elite level, a player has to master the absolute fundamentals. And I mean to absolute perfection. Based on our data, we're talking about flawless passing technique. Crucially, that means being able to use both your left and right foot effectively for short, medium, and long-range passes. Think about it. If you only have one good foot, elite defenders are going to figure you out in a heartbeat. Plus, it's not just about smashing the ball. It's about pinpoint passing accuracy. You've got to hit your teammate perfectly while minimizing errors that could hand a dangerous counterattack right to the opponent. Then, you combine that flawless passing with high-level individual skills, stuff like dribbling, ball control, heading, shooting, tackling. And lastly, you have to back all of that up with prime physical condition. You need the raw strength, the lightning speed, the agility, and the cardio to keep executing these moves flawlessly for a full 90 minutes. It's the whole shebang. All right, moving right along to Section 2, on-pitch intelligence. Let's call this the invisible game. Now, those physical attributes we just talked about, they're fantastic. But without a brilliantly sharp mind directing them, they're honestly kind of useless against a well-organized defense. This brings us to that highly elusive football IQ that all the greatest playmakers in history just seem to have. And football intelligence isn't just about knowing the rulebook inside and out. It is this deep, intuitive understanding of the match's rhythm. It's that uncanny ability to scan a chaotic, totally crowded pitch and instantly spot a tiny pocket of empty space. And it's also about recognizing game momentum, knowing exactly when to slow things down to frustrate the opponent and when to hit the gas for a killer counterattack. Just think about the split-second mental loop an elite player runs through the exact moment they receive the ball. It's a rapid, three-step process. Step 1, receive the ball cleanly. Step 2, instantly evaluate your options. Do I pass? Do I dribble? Do I shoot? And step 3, execute it. The best players in the world are running through this entire loop in a fraction of a second. That ensures their decisions aren't just fast, they're perfectly accurate, which keeps the defense constantly on their heels. And this elite intelligence, it dictates how a player interacts with the opposition too. Smart players are basically mind readers. They're constantly reading opponent movements to anticipate attacks before they even happen. They don't just stick rigidly to one predictable pattern of play, right? They improvise. They find these crazy creative solutions to escape super tight, high-pressure situations. They deeply understand individual tactics, knowing exactly when it's safe to push up, when they need to drop back and defend, or when they just have to hold their shape. And maybe most dangerously of all, they are always watching. They're just waiting to identify and ruthlessly exploit their opponent's weaknesses. Could be a defender who's a bit slow to turn, or a fullback who keeps drifting out of position. They see it, and they punish it.
That leads us perfectly into Section 3, mental steel and discipline, or as we like to call it, the inner warrior.
You know, professional football requires some serious psychological armor. I mean, all the technical skill and football IQ in the world can just totally fall apart if your mind isn't rock solid. An elite player maintains absolute emotional control. They aren't getting easily provoked into making some silly, reckless tackle, and they stay incredibly calm even when they're dealing with terrible referee decisions or superheated situations on the pitch. They possess what our source text brilliantly calls mental baja, a true steel mentality. That means having this unshakable confidence. They are never intimidated by opponents who might be more famous, physically larger, or historically stronger. Plus, they are completely pressure-resistant. They literally do not let nerves ruin their touch when they're playing in front of massive, deafening crowds, and they know exactly how to block out all that intense hostility from away supporters.
And check out this really fascinating interplay between discipline and fighting spirit. Look at the contrast here. We've got strict off-pitch discipline, which means maintaining a perfectly healthy lifestyle, having flawless training habits, and strictly obeying your coach's tactical instructions, compared directly with the on-pitch reality of a relentless fighting spirit. I love this because it perfectly highlights how the quiet, honestly kind of boring discipline of your daily lifestyle is actually the exact fuel you need for that high-octane engine on the pitch. It's what allows you to never, ever give up until that final whistle sounds.
Which brings us to our fourth and final pillar today, Section 4, Synergy and Teamwork, the team player. At the end of the day, guys, one amazing player doesn't win a league title all by themselves. It just doesn't happen. Our source material is crystal clear on this point. Putting the team first is an absolute non-negotiable requirement. This means a player has to fully understand and strictly execute the manager's overarching strategy. They have to play their specific tactical role, even if it means totally sacrificing their own personal glory. It also requires highly active, crystal clear communication with teammates all over the pitch, just to maintain defensive shape and coordinate those attacks. Ultimately, it demands completely unselfish teamwork. If a teammate has even a slightly better angle for a shot, an elite player makes the pass, period. They'd always put the badge on the front of the shirt ahead of the name on the back. So, bringing everything we've just learned together, it becomes incredibly obvious that raw individual skill is literally just one single piece of the puzzle when you're trying to build a complete, high-quality football player. As you can see, that skill sits right alongside and is perfectly equal to football intelligence, tactical discipline, a really strong mentality, and teamwork. Take away just one of these slices, the player's incomplete, and they'll get easily exposed at the highest levels of the sport for sure. Let's actually read this powerful conclusion directly from our source material, because it just beautifully summarizes this entire 18-point blueprint we've been exploring. It says, a great football player is not only one who has high individual skill, but also one who has playing intelligence, tactical discipline, strong mentality, the ability to work together, and is able to make the right decisions in a matter of seconds for the sake of the team. Honestly, that sentence right there, That is a masterclass in what it takes to actually reach the very top. And that brings us to our final thought for today. Whether you are actively lacing up your boots for practice or you're analyzing the game from the stands this weekend, I want you to ask yourself, which quality will you train today? Because true mastery, it isn't achieved overnight. It's built one single step, one decision, and one quality at a time. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep analyzing the beautiful game.